Hey everybody, it's Ron over at Becoming Enlightened Together. Just so you know, for the one or two people that watch, I'll be changing the probably the title of this site. I'll be keeping the handle of Becoming Enlightened Together, as I'm going to be adding a lot more things with time. But as far as the actual title, I'll probably change it to something like Ron's Runes or something like that, because YouTube has informed me in their infinite wisdom that it's not exactly a business savvy type of title for what I'm doing. And well, I admit that I'm wrong, and of course they would know better, I would think, in this particular regard. So I'm not beyond admitting my mistakes. So just so you know. Now, the overall energy for the week is that of August. Now, August is a very, very potent energy indeed. And again, as I always state when I pull this rune, it's the one that Winston Churchill more or less brought to the light back in the early World War II, when he used to flash his peace sign and things of that nature. Now, it does talk about things along those lines in a sense, and he was a highly initiated druid, so he knew very well, the mysteries to some degree, the information, especially, referring to the Celtic and Nordic belief systems, very, very ancient belief systems. So, with that being said, what it means basically is friendships, the soul, aspirations. It talks about guardianship, the need to guard oneself and or others. It talks about defense and protection. It talks about a shield or shielding. It talks about the warding off of evil. And it talks about, protecting one's success, whether it was earned or won. So, again, it talks about also a higher life, your intuition, and being one with the gods. I mean, pretty powerful rune, to say the least. And that's the overall energy for this week. Now, the rune that we pulled on Sunday for today was the goddess Freya's rune, Fehu. Now, again, just to bring it to your understanding, and as I become more and more educated on all of this stuff from so many different areas, I will share them with you. Now, this rune, Fehu, may also signify or indicate, as it is the first letter in their alphabet, for the other gods and goddesses that have that same first letter, such as Goddess Frigg, who is the wife of mighty Odin, and the actual twin brother of the goddess Freya. Okay, so Freyr. Now, with that being said, what this talks about is abundance in all levels. It talks about health and wealth and overall well-being, success, financial, gain and independence. Like I said, abundance. Talks about social success, sign of hope, and plenty. Either possessions that were won or earned, material gain. That doesn't mean stolen, so let me make that clear, because there's a couple of cross watchers I know that like to peep in from time to time and view what's going on. So no, this is honest gain, because even those who, if you watch Hollywood and get your history solely from them, you would think that all they do is rape and pillage and burn down villages, and that certainly isn't the truth at all. They did have a very complex social order. In fact, they were in many ways far more advanced than their other Western counterparts. And much of what we have here today within almost all of the Western cultures was derived in some fashion, form, or whatever from the Vikings as a whole, as they literally got around. So I'll just leave it at that. But it's another very powerful rune. That's basically in our past position. Now, the energy that we get for the present is another very powerful rune about protection, defense, and so on. This is Awas. Okay? The letter E-I in their alphabet. Now, keep in mind, these runes, before they were a dead alphabet of sorts, consisting of 24 letters from the old Futhark system, and there's multiple different systems along the way with time, but the old one, the one that I subscribe to, is what they call the old Futhark, and it consists of 24 runes, to denote their alphabet for pronunciation and things like that. But long before they were ever used in that capacity, they were being used magically. Okay. Now, I believe, with my research and the other things that I've come across that I see now are indeed associated to some degree, because I see it within the Tibetan, Hindu. I see it, also looked at in the indigenous cultures such as ancient Australia with the Aboriginals. I see that practiced also perhaps with the Mesoamericans, Aztecs, Mayans, and Toltecs. But the use of sound, cymatics. They used these runes in a fashion where it was the way that they sang or they spoke these words to get a desired outcome, if you will. Very similar to the way magic is conducted today. It's not just a bunch of incantations or get this product or that product, you burn this, that, or the other thing. It's not. It has a lot more to do with the intent and the words, okay? That's a whole nother subject, but the more I look into these things from so many different, angles, the more I am absolutely under that belief, okay? And I will help to bring that together in a more comprehensive system later on. But right now, what this means, Iwas, it talks about, that's like the Tower card, if you will, in the tarot deck. It means both death and rebirth, okay? So that could refer to the death and rebirth of a cycle, as we know that we are coming to the close of, for both the karmics and for the collective as a whole. It also talks about quests and success and strength. It talks about reliability and dependability, trustworthiness, somebody who, again, is capable of and does defend others and themselves. It talks about, again, protection and endurance, the driving force to endure and to acquire, motivation and purpose. It talks about sights being set on an achievable goal and, in fact, achieving it. It talks about an honest person whom can be depended upon. Very, very powerful. So all the energy in today's reading is all in the upright, and it's all very powerful runes. Okay? So what we also have, as far as our obstacles and possible challenges, is Manas. It too is in the upright. Now Manas talks about man, mankind, persons, talks about altruism, it talks about friends, enemies, it talks about people's attitudes towards you and yours towards them. It talks about creativity, it talks about social order and intelligence. It talks about forethought, creative skills and abilities. It talks about the divine structure as well. It talks about awareness and expect to achieve some sort of aid now or in the very near future. So in the collective, if you are in need of some type of assistance, whether it's materialistic or whether it's just good advice, whatever the case may be, it's coming your way. So good news. Now, in terms of our help and advice, we have yet another rune in the upright, and this is, Sagittarius's energy, or, one of several actually, from the runic belief system. It's called Isa. Now, Isa stands for low energy, or, stagnation, or being frozen, or not moving, static, stasis, ice, if you will. If you know anything about the laws of thermodynamics, you know what you're really talking about is at the molecular level, the molecules are becoming slower and slower and slower in their movement. And the slower the movement, how we would equate that from our vantage point, would be something getting colder, if you will. So as the molecules speed up, then we would perceive that as something getting hotter. So when something gets down to what we call an absolute zero state, which is minus 460 degrees Fahrenheit and or minus 273 degrees centigrade, theoretically what that means is all molecular movement has ceased. In a sense, that defies some other laws of physics that we have. And again, I get fascinated with this and I get off on tangents. But as we know, energy cannot be created or destroyed, but can be converted from one form into another. And that's exactly what we see when we're actually observing the molecules as they get closer and closer to absolute zero. And we're only like within 1,000th of a degree of achieving that in the laboratory environment. Well, it's colder than the darkest, coldest regions of outer space, presumably, if there is such a thing. And again, that's a whole other subject. I know that I opened up a can of worms with that, but again, that's something that's echoed literally in every belief system, except for so-called science. I'll get into that maybe in another day. But anyways, so what we're seeing there is a transition. We see things such as superconductivity. That means electrons flowing with absolutely zero resistance. So what you put into something is what you get out. Almost like a 0-point energy type of application, or something that so-called scientists today say is impossible, but it isn't. And we also see things such as levitation that occurs, things like that. So it's fascinating to me. I love science, real science, not the bullshit that they try to slam down our throats and tell us to accept and move on. Again, that's a whole other subject, but that's what I saw basically means. So it means don't find yourself in a position where you're just unable to move forward, okay? Sometimes we have to make the very best decisions and do what we can based on the information that we may have available at that moment. And trust, if you are in the collective, it will be perhaps the right decision that you're going to make, because you have guides, you have your higher self, you have all of these things that are pushing you along in a certain direction. You have to learn how to trust your intuition. You have to learn how to trust these things. You will move forward. And I've been there many times. I know where it seems like there is no possible solution, or I have no idea really what to do, and then you just simply make that move and you move forward, and eventually things work out, okay? But don't stay stagnant is basically what this is telling us. And it's telling us we have a tremendous amount of very, very powerful and positive energy at our disposal to help us in whatever transition that we find ourselves as we, again, move from the end of one cycle into the beginning of a new one. And I know it's confusing. It's going to be different for all of us. It is. Even though that we're all going basically in the same direction in terms of our spiritual evolution is concerned, and to help bring in this new world, so to speak. Okay. Now, finally, what we have for the future is another very powerful and great rune. It's the magical Gibo, if you will. X marks the spot on a treasure map. And it always reminds me of the saying in Christianity, lest you seek, for wisdom as you would for buried treasure, you're in no wise going to find any. And I do. Every day, without fail, I search and I search and I search and I search, and I'm always trying to find, the truth and the facts of something. Because for the most part, a lot of what we would otherwise, it would benefit us to know and to put into practice immediately, are kept from us deliberately, from the powers who hoard it for themselves, who have deliberately either destroyed it or have hoarded it, if you will, for themselves in their small groups or families. So with that being said, just treat wisdom and knowledge as you would anything materialistic, because it will bring the other things. Remember, seek ye first the kingdom, and everything else will basically be added unto you. And this applies in terms of wisdom. We see that again in Christianity. Christ himself had likened himself to, the wisdom itself. He is the truth, right? He's talked about that in many, many different verses and so on. And I use Christianity because I'm more familiarized with it. But I know that there are parallels found in both Hinduism, Buddhism, and even though Buddhism is not really traditional religion in general, it's just a way of living, philosophical way of living, basically. And the Buddhist story is fascinating to me too, but that's something else. And you find these things echoed in so many other places. That's how I know it is a truth, if you will, a universal truth of sorts. Okay, even though it's been, if you will, taken by this group or that group, or this belief system or whatever, and they've changed the words to some degree to reflect the culture in which it was made for, so to speak. we see these same sentiments echoed again and again and again and again throughout the world. And again, those to me are telltale signs that indeed it is a truth, a universal truth. And in a world filled with lies, as Christianity again points out to us, especially in the end times, again, which is one of the, again, signs of so-called the end. It's very difficult to find any truth. It really is. So with that being said, and I don't want to get too much on a tangent, more than I already have, what the overall reading is that you have a tremendous amount of positivity coming your way at the end of this cycle, but it's also telling you can't just sit there on your laurels. You have to pack up your bags, or you have to actually make a move at some point. Okay, now it's not telling everybody to move rashly or without any thought whatsoever, but I'm just saying, especially if this resonates with you, you may have sat on something for a long time and you're waiting for a clear indication of something, and I'm here to tell you that doesn't always happen. Sometimes, maybe the universe wants to see how you respond to something and react, and then it will later catch you. You know what they say, the universe favors the bold, that kind of a thing. I found that to be absolutely yet another universal truth. It is true, but only if you're moving in righteousness and goodness and so on. And by that I don't mean in a religious fashion. I mean more in a spiritual fashion. You're doing what's best, regardless of what you're told or what everybody else may say. Okay? So with that being said, and I'm going to go ahead and do another cycle. I'll come back and try to put another reading together very quickly. Okay? Until then, y'all take care. Have a great day, and we'll see each other in the far off future, together, eye to eye, face to face, cheek to cheek, and we will do battle, with the forces that are behind all of this that we cannot clearly see in the visible spectrum, but does exist, just like the goodness does. Okay, so keep faith in that goodness and in yourself, and I will see you in the future. Take care. God bless.